So recently, I, 24, female, got into a lot of drama with my family over my mom's belongings. My mom passed away earlier this year after a long battle with lung cancer. She had been suffering for a pretty long time, and in the end, we were all there for her. Even my father, 49, male, although they were divorced. They got divorced 10 years ago, and my mom was diagnosed 4 years back. In the meantime, my dad met my stepmom, Veronica, 41, female, and got married 6 years ago. So I also have a stepsister, Leanne, 17, female. Towards the end, in spite of their past differences, my parents were nice to each other, and I thought that it was because my dad had softened towards her because of her condition, but now I just think that he was being greedy. Maybe he expected her to leave him something if he visited her every other weekend and spent time with the two of us as a family. Because I remember that when my mom's lawyer informed me that she had left literally everything to me, my dad was pretty upset. He didn't say it outright, but he didn't have to say it because I knew that he was upset since he had been expecting something and had been disappointed. Anyway, I didn't think much of it because at the time there were much heavier things on my mind. Now, fast forward to a couple of weeks ago, my dad came to me and he said that he knew I had inherited everything from my mom, but he would still request me to let him keep her antique collection. My mom loved her little collection. Some of them were kind of common, but a couple of pieces were very rare and expensive, so I was kind of skeptical about it. But my dad insisted, and he seemed quite emotional about it. It's not like he was asking for a lot, and so I decided to let him have it. I never thought that he would sell it or do anything like that. It simply never occurred to me because everyone knew how special it was to my mom. And I thought that my father would value it the same way that I had. Because at one point in time, he and my mom had loved each other, so I thought he would cherish and respect that. But he didn't. Because 2 weeks ago, I decided to visit my dad and I wanted to see the antiques because I found it strange that he hadn't put it on display. After all, these things are meant to be on display, so I wanted to know where he had kept it. First, he told me that he had placed it in the attic, and I thought it was weird because there it would just sit and gather dust and nothing else. So I told him that I wanted him to put it on display, and he told me he just wanted to keep it to himself because he didn't want to put Veronica out by placing something that was special to my mom on display in their home. And that made sense, I guess. But I knew that my mom would have wanted her collection on display and not gathering dust in some attic. So I told him I would like to take at least some of the rare pieces home with me so we could split the whole thing and that way things would work out. And he started arguing against that, which is when I thought something must be fishy here. In the end, I finally got the truth out of him, and he told me that he had put it all up for sale, and he couldn't give it to me, and that was just it for me. I was very upset with him, and I told him he had no right to do that, knowing how special all of this was for my mom. I had trusted him with that, thinking that maybe he would respect it, but he clearly hadn't. And while we were arguing, I got a bit loud. So Veronica came into the room and she intervened and said that the only reason my dad had sold all of it was so that he could support Leanne and send her to college. I don't understand why he had to do it because Leanne has her own father to support her. But Veronica started to tell me that her ex was struggling with his business, so he couldn't pay for her tuition. And she herself hadn't exactly that kind of money, so she had to convince him to sell it. And she tried to tell me that it was not really his fault, and I shouldn't be screaming at him because he was just trying to do something good for my sister. That just ticked me off even more because she was really not my sister. And neither was Veronica, my mom. I had lost my mom, and it was a big deal for me. And I couldn't believe that my father would do something like this and betray not just my mom, but also me and my trust. So I tried to tell her to stay out of it, but she just kept insisting that it was not my dad's fault. And she was the one who had convinced him. So I snapped at her and I told her that it definitely was both their faults. Hers, for thinking that she was going to get away with something like this, and his, for thinking that he could lie to me and disrespect my mom's memory, and believing that it was something that I would be totally fine with. I made it very clear to them that I was going to get those pieces back by hook or by crook, even if they didn't let me take it back that day itself. And if it came down to it, I would be willing to sue them for it. Because at the end of the day, these things belonged to me. It was not theirs to sell in the first place. Having said that, I stormed out and I gave them 3 days to return everything to me, but they couldn't do it. So I decided to speak to a lawyer and I filed a lawsuit against them. But now I'm being told that I'm being way too harsh on them and that I'm destroying my family for someone who's not around anymore. Obviously, all of this is coming from my dad's side of the family. They are trying to convince me to drop the lawsuit against them, but I'm not having it. They're trying to convince me that I'm being cruel and selfish, but I don't think that that's what it is. Although I have to say, so many people having such strong opinions trying to convince me otherwise have made me doubt myself, even though I'm not fully convinced that I'm wrong. I just feel kind of confused, so I'm here. So let me know, AITA, for filing a lawsuit against my dad and his family, for selling my recently deceased mom's antiques collection without my consent. Update 1. Hi, thanks to everybody who commented on my post and validated how I was feeling. It was really kind of you guys, and given my current situation, much necessary. I have decided to ignore everything that my dad's side of the family was saying about all of this being wrong and everything, because I know what's wrong and what's right. What's wrong with my dad choosing to sell all those things that were so special to my mom after I had trusted him with them to keep them safe and sound, after he had practically requested me for it. That was wrong. I don't know anything else. And I don't have to entertain these messages from anybody else. I know what I'm doing, and I know what I'm doing is the right thing to do at the moment. If they can't stomach that, then that's their problem. And most importantly, they seem to forget that if my dad is my family, so is my mom. And he was only selling these things so he could support Veronica and Leanne, so that he could do what they wanted him to do. I obviously don't have a problem with that kind of thing. He can support them financially all he wants, but it has to come out of his own pockets. He cannot sell something that belongs to me and my mom and expect me to be fine with it. After all, they are not my family. They never have been. Even when I was younger, when Veronica and Leanne were first introduced to me, they were nice. But they never bothered to make an effort to make me feel like I'm part of their family. My dad and the two of them were also one unit, and so far, it has never changed. I've always been an outsider, and I'm fine with that because I had my mom. But now, all of a sudden, they are expecting me to treat them like family? Yeah, that's not how it works. And there's no way that I'm going to let them use my mom's cherished memories to fund their own lifestyle. If she needs to go to college, she can take out a student loan like thousands and thousands of people in this country too. Leanne and Veronica are not special. They're not made of glass. They can handle things on their own. None of this is my problem, and I'm not going to let anybody change my mind about it now. I have decided that I'm not going to feel guilty about any of this because honestly, I think I've dealt with enough. I didn't speak about it in my previous update, but in reality, it was my dad who had abandoned our family, and I've always been closer to my mom. He knows that, and he had a chance to make things right with me after my mom's passing or even after her diagnosis. And I thought that we were going that way. I thought we were on the right track because after my mom's diagnosis, he started trying to spend more time with me and even with her so that we could at least pretend for a while that we were a real family because I think everybody knows that my mom never really moved on. Now, I just think that all of that was because he wanted my mom to leave him something because she had pretty much made a fortune for herself in the past 10 years. And he expected something from her, which I think is ridiculous because a few years of being nice to her is not going to undo all the damage. I don't know why he was even expecting anything in the first place because it's not like he had a happy marriage with her. She was a bit of a workaholic, I'll give him that. But my dad was no picnic either. He resented my mom because she was a lot more successful than him in terms of her work. And even though they had graduated from the same college together, their lives couldn't have been more different. My dad ended up taking on the tasks that would have typically been my mom's, like taking care of most of the household work and of me, since my mom worked long hours and made a lot more money than he did even back then. So there were a lot of fights about this, and back then, I obviously didn't get any of it, but I'm assuming it was because all of this made my dad feel emasculated. And that was actually what led to the divorce in the long run. My dad was not happy with his life. So my parents would fight almost every single day. For a while, so that my dad's workload at home could ease up a little, my mom decided to hire a housekeeper and a nanny so he could quit his job and work on his own business model. So he could start something for himself, which is what he had wanted all along. She even decided to invest in it because she was doing pretty well for herself by then. Coincidentally, that's around the time that she started collecting. Anyway, that's not relevant. For a couple of years, things calmed down for a bit, but eventually my dad couldn't make it work. And one day he just decided to leave. It wasn't like they were fighting at the time or anything. One day he just told us that he couldn't do this anymore and that he wanted to end this marriage because he had just fallen out of love with her. She tried to request him to stay. She wanted him to at least give marriage counseling a chance. But he had made up his mind, and within the week, he had moved out. Obviously, that was not ideal. And I felt really hurt because I felt like my dad was not just leaving my mom behind, but also me, in a way. Since I remember that after he left home and filed for a divorce, he didn't properly visit me or bother to have any real contact with me, apart from a few instances here and there, until the divorce came through and the custody arrangement was finalized. Even after that, whenever I would visit him on the weekends to spend time with him, he was always too busy for me. So naturally, I was much closer to my mom than I was with him. And after Veronica and Leanne became a part of his life, he pretty much just forgot about my existence for the most part. And I tried to make my peace with all of it. So you guys can see that I've had a pretty rocky relationship with my dad from the beginning itself. My mom meant everything to me, and at this point in time, when I'm grieving for her, the least that he could have done for me was be respectful to what I wanted. And yet, he couldn't care less. His priority has always been himself and Veronica and Leanne, never me. So I think it's pretty ridiculous of him and his family to expect me to go easy on him just because we are family. He's never cared about the fact that I am his daughter. So why should I care about the fact that he's my dad? Has he ever behaved like my father? Yeah, exactly. I'm going to treat him exactly how he deserves to be treated. I'm honestly done with all of this nonsense now. Hey, so my dad and I have decided to negotiate because he knows for a fact that I'm not going to drop the lawsuit. I want all my mother's antiques back, and that's it. I'm not interested in hearing his excuses or whatever. So he tried to delay it as long as possible, but now he has to face the music. Obviously, right now, they are trying to come to a settlement with me, but I don't think that we can solve this without going to court because they are trying to offer me money. Some of the antiques have already been sold, and they think that it'll be a very complicated and very tedious process to get it back. But I don't care. I don't care about how they do it. I just want my things back because I had trusted him and he has broken my trust. So now I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to do whatever it takes, but I want my mom's stuff back, and that is it. Naturally, today it was a pretty heated conversation that we had, and I'm guessing that this will go on for a while because things finally go to court. Otherwise, though, I really can't see any way to come out of it getting what I want. One thing is for sure, though, I'm definitely not going to settle out of court. That's not what I want, and I'm pretty sure that that's not what my mom would have been happy with either. She was a fighter, and so am I, and I'm going to get what I want, and I'm not going to settle for anything other than that. Today was difficult, but I'm hoping I get the hang of it because today it was very emotionally difficult for me to face my father. Not because I was ashamed or anything, but because he looked very tired and upset. And in spite of my rocky relationship with him, I don't want to make people feel like that. Ultimately, he is still my father. We are family, and I know that. The logical part of my brain knows that I'm not doing anything wrong, but well, the emotional side doesn't really understand it. And it was just very difficult for me to get through everything. And whatever happened after we were done with the mediation session, that didn't make anything easier for me either because he tried to talk to me and I had to turn him down because I knew that talking to him in person was just going to make things more difficult for me. And I didn't want it. I want to stay strong. So I had to tell him that I didn't want to talk to him until things were all solved. He looked so hurt and upset. It was very difficult for me to deal with it because no matter what I've been through, it never gets easier to hurt somebody and act like you're not bothered by it because that's not the kind of person I am, to be honest. Update 3. Hey, so today my dad came to visit me. It's been a couple of days since we last saw each other, but that was with our lawyers, so I really wasn't expecting this visit. I thought that would be the next time that we would be seeing each other during our next mediation session. But he was outside my door this morning, and when I let him in, he started to tell me he was very sorry about everything that had happened. He told me it was not possible for him to return everything that he had taken from me, and he knew that what he had done was really wrong, but he just wanted me to drop the lawsuit because it was very difficult for him to deal with all of this stress. And it was not good for his heart. He started to tell me about all the troubles that he had been having, not just with me, but even in his business. Apparently, Veronica had been lying. It was not her ex-husband who had been having financial trouble. It was he himself. I found that very weird because it was stretching things way too far just to cover up something like this. He told me the truth is that Leanne's dad never really saved up any money for his daughter's education, and Veronica had continued to promise her that she would never have to resort to taking out a student loan or anything, knowing that her husband did not have anything saved up. And obviously, now that she's around the age where she has to take all these things into consideration, she's been asking about it. And Veronica has been promising her that everything has been handled. But obviously, Veronica and her ex both know that they don't have this sort of money, and she's going to be forced to take out a student loan if she gets to know the truth. But she'll never be able to forgive them for giving her false hope and lying to her for so long. So Veronica told my dad about all of this, and she was pretty distressed, so my dad offered to help her out. But they knew that he didn't have the kind of money to make that sort of commitment, so they came up with this plan, and she convinced him to ask for those antiques and sell them so they can cover the cost of her education. They thought that I wouldn't miss it because at the end of the day, I have literally everything else that belongs to her. I have her home, I have her jewelry, I have her clothes, and everything else. So they thought that I would have enough to remember her by, and I wouldn't have to think about all of this. But they were wrong. After he told me the truth about everything, I didn't even know what to say to him because I had no idea that he and his wife had come up with such an elaborate lie. I don't know how much of this Leanne knows, but I know for a fact that whatever they told me, it really messed with my head. Anyway, my dad was trying to convince me to drop the lawsuit against him. And he kept trying to tell me that this is not what my mom would have wanted. But on the contrary, I think if my mom knew exactly what he was playing at, she would have definitely encouraged me to go ahead and do what's right instead of just buckling down because of familial pressure. So clearly, he definitely doesn't know the version of my mother that I was used to. And I know for a fact that my mom has always encouraged me to do the right thing. And even now, no matter how difficult it is for me emotionally or otherwise, I'm still going to keep doing it. So even after he explained everything to me, I told him I could understand that this was a bunch of problems that he had to deal with. But at the end of the day, these are his problems, not mine. And if he and Veronica could have just been honest with Leanne, then they wouldn't be in this mess at all. And I'm not the one responsible for any of this. I'm not going to pretend that I understand why they did all of this instead of just being transparent with her. And neither am I going to pretend that I'm okay with their decision to sell my mom's antique collection just because they thought that I wouldn't miss it. I told him that I'm not going to sit here and sympathize with him if that was what he was expecting. Yes, definitely I would want his business to do better in the future. But other than that, there's nothing that I had to say to him. And obviously that didn't sit well with him. And he got really mad at me. He started to tell me that I was being very selfish, that he couldn't believe that this is the kind of person that he had raised. Except that he really hadn't raised me as much as my mom and my nanny had. Sure, when I was very little, maybe I could say that he did his best to raise me. But even then, it was always a compulsion for him, not something that he did happily. But after that, it was mostly my nanny and my mom who did everything for me. He barely even had time for me. So it's not surprising that he doesn't feel like he knows me, because he really doesn't. Even in the past few years, he's never made an effort, and yet I, like a total fool, had always done my best to do right by him because he was my family. Anyway, I said all of this to him directly to his face because I was sick of keeping these things to myself so that I wouldn't end up hurting him even more than I already was. But I couldn't do it anymore. I just can't because he has made things very difficult for me, and he's never cared about how I'm feeling or what I'm going through. He doesn't even care that I've just lost the most important person in my life a couple of months ago, and even now he's making everything about himself. I can't deal with this kind of crap anymore. I just let it all out, and I let him have it this time. He was actually quite shocked because I don't think he was expecting me to have an outburst like this. I'm usually a very quiet person. I don't even like screaming and shouting at people. But this time, I didn't hold back at all. And this was a very new and different version of me that he was seeing. After I was done screaming at him, he just decided to tell me that he'd had thought that I would understand. He thought that I would be a little more compassionate than I had been so far, but clearly he had been mistaken. He told me that my mom would be ashamed of my behavior and that he couldn't believe that his own daughter had turned against him like this. Once again, he tried to manipulate me emotionally, but I was not having it. I just remained stoic and I didn't even say anything. I let him go on as long as he wanted to. He just kept on ranting about the same things over and over again. At one point in time, I think he finally realized I was not going to respond and I was not going to give him the satisfaction of getting a reaction out of me. In the end, he just told me he was glad I was showing my true colors now, so that he wouldn't have to worry about hurting me too much in the future. because clearly I couldn't care less about him, and I obviously did not think of him as family. He told me that I was the most selfish, egoistic, and self-centered person that he could ever imagine. And from now on, the only person that he's going to consider as his child is Leanne and nobody else. Obviously, that hurt a lot, but I didn't let it show. And after saying all these things, he just left. After he left, I ended up crying for a bit because regardless of whatever had happened, it still hurt to be told by a parent that he didn't think of me as his daughter anymore. But now I know I can't do anything about it, so I'm just going to have to fight it out. And I'm hoping that things will be in my favor and I at least get my antiques back, because that's really what started this whole fight. I wanted my mom's collection back so I could keep it to myself, so I could cherish her memory. And now the fight is only going to end when I get it back. Update 4. Hey everybody, so it's been 2 months since my last day, and like I said, the fight was only going to end once I got my mom's antiques back. And I'm really happy today because finally I'm getting it all back, just as I had expected. Things ended up going to court after my last meeting with my father because he was not willing to come to any sort of settlement anymore. And he also wanted things to go to court. So naturally, that's exactly what happened. And after a bit of back and forth, the court ordered my father to make sure that every single antique from my mom's collection was returned to me in the condition that he had been given them. And if not, then he would have to compensate me by paying twice the amount. So he had a choice. He could either go to the extent of getting everything back, or he could just spend twice the amount, which was quite a lot because, like I said, my mom's collection, although some of them were common, some of them were also rare and were worth a lot. Anyway, that was a while back, and today my dad returned everything to me, and even though he did not talk to me or even acknowledge my existence while he was handing it over, I didn't even care because I got what I wanted, and that's all that matters. Now all of it is on display at my home, the entire collection, and it finally feels like my mom is here with me. And I hope that she's proud of me and the way that I've learned to fight for myself and stand up for myself. I know that that's what she would have wanted for me. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.